afternoon. As you all saw, the President delivered remarks at the Latino Coalition Summit this afternoon. The business leaders in attendance are living proof that the American dream is back and stronger than ever under President Trump's leadership. As the President noted, last year Hispanic unemployment reached the lowest level in history. It has now remained below 5% for the longest period ever recorded. Latino-owned businesses are thriving like never before, contributing nearly $500 billion to our economy last year alone. And with the President's pro-growth policies, this is only the beginning. The last couple of weeks, we have been highlighting Senate Democrats' historic efforts to obstruct the ability of the government to function. A stunning 43% of the President's highly qualified nominees are still waiting for confirmation in the Senate. Senator Schumer's tactics have led to 102 fewer confirmations than the next closest administration. As I noted before, blocking Rick Grinnell from serving as ambassador to Germany is putting our national security in jeopardy. Today, I'd like to highlight Ulim Poblik. It has been almost 150 days since Dr. Poblik was nominated to serve as Assistant Secretary of State for Arms Control, Verification, and Compliance. She would work to verify compliance of arms control, including disarmament agreements and missile defense cooperation. We need her in place so she's able to fully represent the United States at upcoming international meetings to discuss Syria's use of chemical weapons and to participate in April's nuclear non-proliferation treaty preparatory committee meetings. Say that really fast. And yet Senator Schumer is holding her up, putting the safety and security of the American people and frankly the entire world in danger. Senator Schumer is blocking nominees indiscriminately. He forces time-wasting procedural votes on nominees and then eventually votes in support of them. Just yesterday, the Senate had to waste precious floor time on a universally respected nominee, Terry Doughty, who was confirmed 98-0. Even Senator Schumer eventually voted in favor of the nominee, yet still demanded the Senate go through archaic Senate procedure that delays votes and wastes the American people's time. It's a disgrace, it's dangerous, and it must come to an end. And with that, I will take your questions.
Sarah, on the tariffs, does the President expect to sign the tariffs tomorrow? And can countries like Mexico and Canada and allies within the European Union expect to have a pathway to gain an exemption from the tariffs?
We expect that the President will sign something by the end of the week, and there are potential carve-outs for Mexico and Canada based on national security and possibly other countries as well based on that process.
Specifically, what would they have to do?
Again, that would be a case-by-case and country-by-country basis, but it would be determined whether or not there is a national security exemption. Cecilia.
So far this year, 6 top White House staffers have resigned. The President says there are more names to come. Why are so many people leaving this administration?
Look, this administration has had a historic first year. We're going to continue to do great things. This is an intense place, as every White House, and it's not abnormal that you would have people come and go, but we're continuing to do great work. We're continuing to focus on the President's agenda, and that's what we're all here to do.
But actually, it is actually abnormal. No administration in recent history has had this much turnover.
But it's not, I said it's not abnormal to have turnover.
If this is not the definition of chaotic, how would you describe what's happening in these recent weeks?
If it was, then I don't think we would be able to accomplish everything that we've done. The economy is stronger than it's been in ages. ISIS is on the run. The remaking of the judiciary. Jobs are coming in at record numbers. There are historic things that have taken place in the first year. Sounds like a very functioning place of business to me. Steve.
Talk about potential carve-outs. Are you also talking about NATO allies as possibly getting this exemption?
It'll be a country by country, and it'll be based on national security.
Let me follow up. Today the President tweeted, China has been asked to develop a plan for the year for a $1 billion reduction in the trade deficit. What's he talking about?
Yeah.
Did he make this recently, or has he been talking to the Chinese?
We had conversations with officials last week, and we're going to continue those conversations with them. The President's been very clear that he wants to address the trade imbalance that the United States has with a number of countries. He feels like the United States has been taken advantage of for far too long, and he's not going to allow that to continue under his watch.
Have they responded?
I'm sorry?
Have they responded?
We're continuing conversations with them. Jeff.
Sarah, you've said repeatedly that we've addressed our feelings on that situation in regards to the Stormy Daniels payment. But specifically, can I ask, did the president approve of the payment that was made in October of 2016 by his longtime lawyer and advisor, Michael Cohen?
Look, the president has addressed these directly and made very well clear that none of these allegations are true. This case has already been won in arbitration, and anything beyond that, I would refer you to the president's outside counsel.
When did the president address specifically the cash payment that was made in October of 2016?
The president has denied the allegations against him. And again, this case has already been won in arbitration. Anything beyond that, I would refer you to outside counsel.
Did he know about that payment
Jeff,
at the time, though?
I've addressed this as far as I can go.
But that payment, did he know about the payment at the time?
Not that I'm aware of. And again, anything beyond what I've already given you, I would refer you to the president's outside counsel. Steve?
Michael Cohen about that, since this has become a
Sorry,
news story
Steve.
this week. Has he talked to Michael Cohen about it? If I can just ask one more thing.
I'm sorry?
Has he talked to Michael Cohen about that this week?
I don't
since
know.
This has become news.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, Sarah, this administration has now imposed additional sanctions on North Korea after concluding that Kim Jong-un's government assassinated his half-brother using the nerve agent in Malaysia. Now we have authorities in Britain have announced that a nerve agent was used to try to kill a former Russian double agent and his wife. Obviously, Moscow, the prime suspect. What does this administration have to say about this attempted assassination in the UK? And are sanctions against Russia likely as they were in the case of the North Koreans?
This is currently under review, and I'll keep you posted as we have further information and developments on that front. Margaret?
Thank you. I want a quick clarifying question on the China tweet, and then I had an NEC question. Is there any chance that if China did respond on that $1 billion reduction plan, that could assuage or affect the shaping of this tariff plan before it is announced at the end of the week? In other words, is China's piece of this tariff thing negotiable, or are we only talking about tweaking Canada, Mexico, EU countries?
Hold on, let me address it first.
Okay.
The president's been clear that he wants to address the trade imbalances and the unfair practices, and certainly we would take anything into consideration, but as of right now, we're moving fully ahead, and anything that would change would be done so on a national security basis. Any decision for carve-outs.
Okay. Obviously, you're going to take your time and space on making the next NEC decision, but can you give us sort of a scope of the short list? And there's two names in particular I wanted to bounce off of you in this room, just among friends here. Larry Kudlow and Andy Pudster. Can you confirm that those two are among the names under consideration? And how much of a role is Gary Cohn himself going to have in helping the president make that pick to succeed him?
I'm not going to get into any naming or a list, but I can tell you that the president has a number of people under consideration, and he's going to take his time making that decision.
With Gary Cohen leaving, Senator Cornyn, Republican Senator Cornyn, said today, "I'm concerned who the president will turn to for advice." Should he be concerned?
No, the president's got a number of very accomplished, smart, capable people around him, and he is going to continue to lean on a lot of those people. But at the end of the day, the American people voted overwhelmingly for President Donald J. Trump. They voted for his policies, his agenda, and for him to be the ultimate decision maker. And I think that everyone can rest assured in the American people's choice on that front, and that they've made the right one.
You said earlier today that we're continuing to bring in new people every day. Could you tell us who has come in this week?
We've made several personnel announcements. I'd refer you back to the press releases of nominations and personnel announcements that have gone out. I think there's been at least 3 that have gone out earlier this week.
In the White House?
I'd be happy to forward those to you if you're not receiving the White House press releases. John?
The European Union's being very shrewd in its threats of retaliation against these tariffs, saying that they would slap tariffs on things like bed linens, which would include the swing states of Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. As manufacturers, chewing tobacco, which includes North Carolina, cranberries, the leading producer of which is Wisconsin, orange juice, again, Florida. Is the president concerned that he could hurt his political fortunes in some of these swing states if he goes ahead with these tariffs?
Look, the president has been talking about this for a long time. It shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. Other countries have created unfair trade policies for decades that have harmed our national and economic security. The president wants a strong economy and a strong national security. And a strong U.S. economy benefits all Americans, particularly by helping us maintain a strong military and defend U.S. national security interests. And he's going to continue every day to fight for making sure that we have strong both national and economic security.
The EU is going to hit him where it hurts. Is he prepared to take the hit?
The president is prepared to protect our country. That is the number one priority he has as president, is to protect our economic and national security interests, and that's exactly what he's doing.
And if I could ask one just about Gary Cohn. He was a noted free trader, a globalist. Will the president seek another globalist, another free trader for
I'm
that
not going to get
position?
ahead of the president's announcement on who will replace Gary.
Follow up on Gary Cohn. The president has often touted the strength of the markets. There has been some volatility. Today, the U.S. markets opened down, so did the Asian markets. Is he concerned about the volatility in the markets in the wake of Gary Cohn's resignation announcement?
The president's focused on long-term economic goals. The economy is still infinitely stronger today than it was when the president took office. We're going to continue to fight for strong economic policy, job growth, wage growth, and certainly an increased number of people that are working in this country. Again, specifically some of the actions that you're going to see through the announcement later this week.
Isn't the message from the markets, though, that they're concerned about Gary Cohn's departure and what it might mean for the stability of this White House and the U.S. economy?
I think if you look at the overall message of the markets, it's that we're doing much better under President Trump than we were doing before he took
And the
office.
president called Gary Cohn a rare talent. Does that mean that he's open to having him come back in some other capacity, perhaps a cabinet level role?
Certainly, they maintain a strong relationship and are going to continue that relationship, and certainly Gary will continue to be an advocate for the president in a number. I'm not closing the door.
Sarah, one more quickly. Can you
I'm going to
confirm-
move around
can
just
you
because I want to make sure I get to as many
Can
of
you
your
just confirm
colleagues
or
as
comment on
possible.
the ABC
Stephen?
News report that a number of staffers have had their...
Chris, I'm going to bounce around, but I'm sure one of your colleagues would be happy to pick up where you've left off.
I do have a question about something you said earlier in response to Jeff's question. You said that there's arbitration that's already been won by whom and when?
By the president's personal attorneys, and for details on that, I would refer you to them.
But you're aware of them, so what more can you share with us?
I can share that that the arbitration was won in the president's favor, and I would refer you to the president's outside counsel on any details beyond that.
Follow-up, separate question. Tomorrow the president will be meeting with video game executives. What does he hope to accomplish, and why is he bringing them in?
The president wants to continue the conversation on every different area that we can to help promote school safety. And I'm not going to get ahead of the discussion that they're going to have tomorrow, but we think it's an important discussion to have and one that the president looks forward to.
Video games are too violent. Is that
I'm
why?
sorry?
Does he think that video games are too violent? Is that why he wants to bring them in?
It's certainly something that should be looked at and something that we want to have the conversation about.
Thanks very much. I was wondering, the president tweeted earlier about saying that the U.S. is acting swiftly on intellectual property theft. Should we understand that to mean that the 301 report is imminent? And can you kind of give us some detail about whether it might lean into tariffs or damages for intellectual property
Something
theft?
certainly that we have considered and talked about extensively, but I'm not going to get ahead of any potential announcements.
Sarah, given the president's criticism of the Attorney General in the past, referring matters to the IG, does he then concur with several of the GOP congressmen who are calling for a second special counsel to look into FISA abuse in the Department of Justice?
The president's made clear that he has significant concerns about the current FISA process. Nothing makes the problem of FISA more clear than both the Democrat and the Republican memos that outlined that. The FBI used political campaign material to get a warrant to spy on American citizens. They failed to disclose to the judge that the dossier was funded by the Clinton campaign and the DNC, even as it was being used to spy on people associated with the Trump campaign. Obviously, those details alone show that the process needs to be looked at closely and reformed to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect the privacy of Americans. Hallie?
Separate topic. I want to ask you about the VA, but I do want to follow up on something you have said twice now this week, which is when asked about that payment to the president, you've said that not that I'm aware of. Have you asked the president this question?
I'm sorry, can you be more specific?
Sure. To both Jeff as well as Monday to the Wall Street Journal reporter, you were asked about whether the president knew about this payment his longtime lawyer made to Stormy Daniels. You said then and again today not that you're aware of. Have you asked the president this question?
Yeah, I've had conversations with the president about this, and as I outlined earlier, that this case had already been won in arbitration, and that there was no knowledge of any payments from the president, and he's denied all of these allegations.
Sarah, but I just want to, is there a reason why you're not answering the actual substance of the question on the payment itself? Because it's come up a few times now. Can you explain
I
that?
believe I've addressed this question pretty extensively, and ongoing litigation, I'm not going to comment any further than I already have.
I would ask for the VA I want to, which is
Sure.
the new IG report coming out. This is an issue that the president has been passionate about, veterans care. It finds that Secretary Shulkin was a part of failed leadership at the VA. So why is he still a part of this administration?
Look, Secretary Shulkin has done a great job, as I outlined on Tuesday, a number of the things that have been approved upon at the VA under his leadership. We're proud of the work that we've done, and we're going to continue to do everything we can to protect the veterans and help veterans in this country. It's something that the president talked about extensively on the campaign and has directed Director Shulkin to take a aggressive approach, and he's done that since becoming secretary. April.
Jordan.
Oh, sorry,
Jordan.
I'm sorry.
All right, thanks, Sarah. I want to ask about
April, that was
elephant
very polite of
trophies.
I'm always polite.
Just to be clear, I didn't suggest otherwise, because I'm sure there will be some sort of terrible comment about how I was abusive to the press otherwise. Go ahead, Jordan.
Me in particular, but go ahead.
All right, thanks, Sarah. I wanted to ask you about elephant trophies. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service put out new guidance saying it would evaluate all permit requests on a case-by-case basis. This comes after the president had suspended the previous guidance, lifting the trophy ban. The president called that practice of collecting trophies a horror show. So I'm wondering, what does the president think of this latest policy in relaxing the ban, and did he sign off on it?
Look, the President Trump's position on trophy hunting remains the same. The Fish and Wildlife's announcement is a response to a court decision impacting how trophy import applications are reviewed. Anything further, I'd refer you to the Fish and Wildlife Service.
Does the president want them to further curtail that, given his thoughts about...
The president's been clear what his position is, and that has not changed. John, April, I'm sorry, I was a little scattered today on
You're all
the
right.
order. Go ahead.
All right, two topics really fast. This president was a businessman before he became a politician. And understanding business, if there's high turnover in a business, it's considered a management issue at the top. What's the issue here?
I don't believe there is one. I think that's why the first year of the administration has been so successful. As many people have outlined, we've actually accomplished a great deal of what the president campaigned on and set out to do, and we've only been here just over a year. So we certainly feel like there isn't an issue, but actually a great deal of success and a great story to tell about the president's first year.
Confidence in this administration with top people. I mean, you've had a lot of people, about 10 to 13 people in top tier positions leave.
I think the confidence should be in the president and the policies that he's outlined and the agenda that he's laid out. That's what the American people voted for, and that's certainly what we've seen enacted over the first year and a half, and I think that's been a tremendous success.
Second issue, going back to Jeff. You know, we heard a tape of the president with Billy Bush, and now we hear about Stormy Daniels, and you're saying that it's not true. What should the American public believe, and what does the president want the American public to believe after hearing that before the election, and now this?
Well, it's not to conflate two different things. The president's denied these allegations. We've addressed this. The American people were aware of this, voted for the president. I don't have anything more to add. John?
Thank you, Sarah. Two quick questions on two separate topics. Have any countries notified the administration of their intent to file complaints with the WTO regarding the imposition of these steel and aluminum tariffs?
I'm not aware of any specific complaints.
On the other question I wanted to ask you, Michael Cohen has indicated that he was not reimbursed in any way by the Trump organization or the Trump campaign for the $130,000 that he paid to Stormy Daniels. At the same time, he's being reimbursed for his legal fees by the Trump campaign. They've already paid $214,000 in legal fees to a firm that's representing Mr. Cohen. I don't want to get you in trouble with the Hatch Act, but do you happen to know why it is that the Trump campaign is paying his legal fees?
I don't. I can't speak on behalf of the campaign. I'd refer you to them. David?
You confirm this trip to California next week, and also why is it taking so long for the president to visit California?
I can confirm the president does plan to make a trip to California next week. Why it's taken so long? I think it's because he's been busy growing the economy, creating jobs, defeating ISIS, remaking the judiciary. I'd be happy to name off some other successes, but I think that's probably enough. But yes, I can confirm the president will be headed to California next week. We'll take one last question. Alex?
Sarah, bouncing off John's question on the Hatch Act, the White House's reasoning that Kellyanne Conway did not violate the Hatch Act when she said that a candidate in Alabama would be, quote, a vote against tax cuts, weak on crime, weak on borders, strong on raising your taxes. How do you see that as not advocating against a candidate?
She didn't advocate for or against the election of any particular candidate. She simply expressed the president's obvious position specific to policy, that he have people in the House and Senate who would support his agenda. I don't think it should be a secret to anybody that the president is going to want people both in the House and Senate that are going to help push forward policies that he supports and push forward policies and his agenda. In fact, Kellyanne's statement actually shows her intention and desire to comply with the Hatch Act, as she twice declined to respond to the host's specific invitation to encourage the people of Alabama to vote for that Republican. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.
Are you saying that ever made an allegation against the president that's been true?
Hey there, and welcome to the Briefing Room. I'm ABC News Political Director Rick Klein, joined here by Catherine Falders and Jordan Phelps from our White House team. So I like conflict, the president said yesterday. Hours later, he's got more conflict than he can possibly hope. Gary Cohn out, the big staffing move, literally news that moves markets, guys. I mean, I hope I'm that important someday that you could create a stock market rally or sell-off based on your very presence inside a job or not. He's gone after all this time.
Yeah, it was funny in the briefing there. You heard Sarah Sanders say, you know, it's not abnormal to have this much turnover, but in fact, it is very abnormal for there to be this much turnover in the first year of a White House. It was triple the amount of turnover we saw in the previous administration, double what we saw under Reagan. So clearly a lot of chaos there in the White House.
And you mentioned that he says he likes conflict, but not chaos. You know, he tweeted the other day that this narrative is false. And of course, hours after that tweet, he lost Gary Cohn, who was also, as you guys know, thinking about resigning in the wake of those Charlottesville comments. But it was funny, Cecilia asked in that briefing, you know, if this isn't chaotic, how do you define chaotic? And as you saw, Sarah Sanders dodged those questions and got into, she said, we've had a historic first year and we continue to do great things, and got into ISIS and everything else. So I don't really know how you define chaotic.
And she called it a very functioning place of business. Guys, you're over there all the time. Do you have the sense that this is a, quote, very functioning place of business right now, given all of the movement and some of the policy ramifications that seem to be tied to that?
You know, I had one former White House official tell me yesterday, crazy times, and it looks like it's getting even crazier. And that pretty much sums it up. There had been kind of a stabilizing period in this White House, and we're seeing kind of the hinges come off again. The press staff are harder to get in touch with. They spend more of their days, you know, behind closed doors, not accessible to the media. There's a lot of shakeup going on over there, and it definitely trickles down to our level.
And look, there's also uncertainty, right? When the president tweets that, and more people may go, it also has White House staffers thinking, is that me? And I mentioned to you yesterday, but somebody sent me a message that says, you know, this place is starting to feel a lot like The Apprentice. You know, we don't know who's next. So
as long as it's not The Bachelor. I've heard
right,
that's what you don't want to be, at least not compared to that today. But it does, as I mentioned, have policy ramifications. We're watching the markets. There's a lot of concern that today would be a massive sell-off. It doesn't seem to have happened, at least not yet. A hard thing to handicap. But it's tied to this issue of tariffs. The Gary Cohn's line in the sand was tariffs. He thinks they're a bad idea. The president has made clear he is going to move forward with the tariffs. We don't know exactly when we're going to see that specifically. We've gotten some indications. It also seems like they're trying to soften a little bit. Again, today you heard from the White House that there may be some carve-outs on a case-by-case basis, particularly for our neighbors here in North America.
Yeah, and look, that walk back is not unexpected, right? Because the president is the one who plowed ahead with making this announcement last week, and the administration was not ready to make that announcement. These tariffs were not ready. We now know that the White House expects to roll those out at the end of the week. But, of course, course, this was the issue that Gary Cohn decided I'm going to fall on the sword over, because his argument all along had been that this is going to reverse the positive impact that these tax cuts have had. And as you saw there, even though the president said he likes dissenting opinions in his White House, Gary Cohn stuck his neck out in disagreeing with the president on this, and now he's out the door.
And if he's not getting dissenting opinions inside the White House, he is from Capitol Hill right now. I've been struck by this. There have been lots of times where people on the Hill are saying, well, I don't agree with this from the president. Usually, though, it's about public statements, personality things. I don't remember a policy issue that had Republicans lining up as much as they have from Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan right on down the list saying, Mr. President, don't do this. This is a bad idea.
Yeah, the pushback from Republicans from his own party on Capitol Hill is quite strong. And a lot of Republicans mention, Paul Ryan in particular, they fear a trade war. And the president's back and forth on that has been striking, too. He says trade wars are good. Then he says, I don't think we're going to have trade wars. And yesterday he was back saying that trade wars, might not be a bad thing.
Right.
So pushback is swift, but he doesn't seem to be budging so much on this, except for hedging a little bit on the countries.
So this very functioning place of business is getting a little less populated, maybe by the day here. ABC News reporting today that there are several other departures that are imminent here of maybe lower level people related to that issue of security clearances. This came up during the Rob Porter incident a couple of weeks back. It was highlighted by the fact that Jared Kushner lost his clearances. Jared is still there. In fact, he's in Mexico today having a meeting there. But we are learning that there are several people that are losing their jobs at the lower level because they had clearance issues. Surprised?
Yeah, Catherine has a lot of the great reporting on this, but no, it's not surprising. We know that Kelly decided to clamp down on this. And so this is really an unexpected side effect.
Is this Kelly?
Yeah, it's a reaction to Kelly's memo that he issued in the wake of the Rob Porter scandal, right? So these departures that we're learning about, as you mentioned, are lower level, but there are people who are being terminated or reassigned for issues related to their security clearances. So not totally unexpected. We also expect that more people perhaps may be gone by the end of the week, but definitely a reaction to his memo.
Okay, and next up today, Stormy's back. Stormy Daniels back in the news, not just because she continues to headline gentlemen's clubs openings, but because of a new piece of information that's come out now, which is a lawsuit. She is suing for what she believes is a confidentiality agreement that doesn't apply. There's that blank name, a pseudonym, and a presidential signature that was never applied to that. You guys heard Sarah Sanders there. She was asked directly by a number of reporters in the room, including our former colleague Jeff Zeleny a moment ago. Did the president know about this payment? Did he authorize this payment? We didn't get an answer, once again.
Yeah, you heard Sarah there saying that the president specifically has denied these allegations, but what she wouldn't answer was whether he had knowledge of this $130,000 payment or might have authorized Michael Cohen to make it. So it's interesting. Question after question has been posed to Sarah on this topic, and she just won't answer.
Guys, let's I'm sorry, put a pin in this just for a moment, because Cecilia Vega just joined us for the White House Lawn. And Cecilia, I want to go back to the issue we were just talking about. I love this quote: "Very functioning place of business." So you just left the.
Do you not agree with that, Rick?
Oh, no, I don't know. That's what I'm going to call my workplace from now on. A very functioning place of business. It's a new thing. I didn't know you could have this label. But my goodness, I mean, the president says he likes conflict. We've been talking here about the difference between conflict and chaos. What's your read of this? I mean, Gary Cohn leaving, markets moving, all of these staff changes. It doesn't feel very functioning.
No, and I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It's not just Cohn, it's Hope Hicks, it's Keith Schiller, it's so many of the president's close personal friends and aides who are now gone. And I was really struck by one caveat of Sarah Sanders' answer to me today when I was asking her about this issue of White House turmoil, which of course they deny that there is any turmoil here. She says Americans elected President Trump to be the leader, and they did. There is no arguing with that. But this is a president, as are all presidents, who needs confidants, who needs an inner circle, who needs loyalists and allies. And the circle of those people here in the West Wing by the day is shrinking and shrinking dramatically. And I think the real question facing this White House going forward is, can they function? Can they govern and do the business that they have to do in the midst of all these distractions. There is just no way to argue that these are not distractions. Most of the briefing today was consumed by questions about whether the president, at the basic level of these questions, most of this White House briefing today was consumed by questions about whether the president has had an affair with a porn star. If that's not a distraction, I don't know what is.
I would agree with that. I think that's a fair assessment, Cecilia. But on Gary Cohn, is he going to be the last to go? I mean, that's kind of a loaded question, a leading question, Cecilia. But what is a signal to you that Gary Cohn decided this is the moment where enough is enough, I can't take this anymore? He was a guy that had a lot of stature in that West Wing. The president respected him because of his success at Goldman Sachs. He's gone. What kind of void does that leave?
Well, it leads a void in what, the role prescribed to Gary Cohn here in this White House was sort of the stabilizing voice inside the West Wing. He was the counter to a lot of the policies in this White House. So that's the president's very laudatory statement about Gary Cohn there. And so on the record, they are delivering niceties to each other. And Gary Cohn released his statement as well, saying that it was an honor and a privilege to serve in this administration. I don't doubt that both of those men believe those two things. Behind the scenes, though, we know that Gary Cohn has been very upset. He was upset about the president's comments in Charlottesville. He fought the trade war fight and lost, and now he is out. And the president said this is very much the type of controlled chaos that he likes to see. Two sides have a conflict, fight it out in front of him, and that's how he makes his decisions. I think there is a method to what many say would be a madness in that, and that is certainly President Trump's way of governing. The problem is there is now there's no counter voice inside this West Wing. If the president wants to see two sides fight, I don't know who fills that void that Gary Cohn is leaving behind. But you asked if this is going to be the last one out. The only thing I can tell you that I know for sure, a year and a half into my job here, Rick, is that I cannot predict what is going to happen in the next 2 hours. And both of the women standing there right next to you who work with me every day in this White House would say the exact same thing.
You guys are wimping out on the bold calls here. All right, Cecilia, there's a very functioning place of business right behind you. You can get back inside. Get back to the gig. I know you'll be on World News tonight in a couple hours. Thanks, Cecilia.
Bye, guys.
I want to move on, guys, to politics. My favorite topic always.
I start hosting the show and asking you the questions.
Well, look, the primary season is upon us. Texas happened yesterday, and I want to bounce a couple of quick thoughts off of you guys. Democrats had a very good night, record turnout in Texas. But I'll tell you another story on this. Republicans actually had way more turnout. And more than that, because we're talking about the president here, the president's coattails work. All of the candidates up and down the ballot that he endorsed won their primaries. The Trump name still means a lot in Republican politics.
Yeah, look, but this was also in Texas, we should point out.
Sure.
And the president still has broad appeal there, but we should note that, yeah, the president does still have, that glimmer in his eye when he gets up on stage. We saw this at CPAC. He got up there and threw the red meat, and the crowd still loved it. He still has that appeal, and we've seen him defy the odds over and over again. We'll see if 2018 is another year for that. We know that the White House is aiming to kind of buck the historical trend of midterm year losses for them. But the Democrats definitely have some traction this year, so we'll have to see.
If I'm the White House political operation, I am pointing to two big names yesterday. One is Ted Cruz, who has been very close to the president after clashing with him so publicly and so blatantly during the primary campaign. He is full on board for Trump. He cruised to his victory, no real concerns there. And more interesting than that, man, George P. Bush, Low Energy Jeb's own son, who decided to endorse Trump. Trump endorsed him back, and he coasts past the primary challenger or two, and he is able to probably coast to re-election as Texas Land Commissioner.
Yeah, totally. I mean, exactly. These are fun ones to watch, especially when you think about the Bushes and the Cruzes of the world, right?
Yeah.
Who you think about the wars that they got in during the campaign, especially with Ted Cruz. So it's definitely fun to watch for the president, and we know that he'll be a central figure in these midterm elections, as Jordan mentioned. He's talking about it, but he did seem a little worried at CPAC when he spent the majority of his time, or a lot of his time, saying get out there and vote. He was worried about the turnout. So
he's got to be worried about Pennsylvania next week.
Exactly.
He'll be on the trail. Joe Biden was just there yesterday. The other big Texas headline, the pink wave is starting to make itself known. Female candidates in more than half of the Texas congressional districts. A lot of firsts are starting to pop up. Again, it's Texas, as you point out. A very red state, almost
Right.
as red as Jordan's dress.
No.
All right, that does it for today's show, guys. Any quick thoughts that you want to leave our viewers with?
You know, it's funny. I'm just going to repeat what Cecilia said because it's just so true that here we are. I think it's only Wednesday, and by Monday, by the end of the day, we felt like it was a Friday. So you really just can't predict it anymore, can you, Jordan?
No, you sure can. And the thought that I'm left with is Stormy Daniels. Yes, there were quite a few questions in today's briefing about that topic, but this hasn't become the full-blown scandal, like a Monica Lewinsky sort of a situation, which just goes to show that this isn't an unexpected storyline in this White House anymore. We've seen so many allegations and stories about the president's sexual relations that it's really not all that surprising anymore, and it's not taking up as much oxygen as you'd think it might in this sort of situation.
We're not even talking about Sam Nunberg anymore.
Can you believe it? That seems like a year ago, Rick.
Seriously, it really does. All right, that's our edition of the Briefing Room for today. Please download the ABC News app. You can watch us all the time at abcnews.com, and we will be back right here next time with the Briefing Room.